I'm going to call the meeting to order, 6:15. What we would like to do is what we normally do is we'll go through each section. If there are any questions by members of the committee, Michael Canales, and if any selectmen join us, they can interject with questions. Otherwise, we would appreciate your holding the questions until I call for them at the end of the section on behalf of everybody else. So the first item of business is the August 31st meeting minutes that was circulated, and those really represented a series of year-end transfers. Does anybody have any questions relative to those minutes?
I'll move approval first, Jay, just to get that on the.
Okay. Any discussion or questions?
So I second the motion.
Okay.
Do we, by the way, need to do roll call votes?
No.
We don't.
It
No.
depends on which lawyer you're talking to, Jay. The planning board was told roll
Yeah.
call everything.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I think.
that's fine. With respect to the minutes, I would, we could do a roll call. Jim, you approve?
Yes.
I approve. Pam, you approve the minutes?
Approve. I approve.
Bill, vote.
Yes, aye.
Steve Schatz,
Yes,
and that is it. That's the six of us. So it's 6-0. The next item, I need, tomorrow evening, the select board is going to be approving the air conditioning renovation that cost $59,426.67. That has been completed. And basically, I would like the approval of the committee to give me the authority to sign off on their approval after they approve tomorrow evening.
this is
a
Steve
reserved
Schatz.
fund
I will
transfer.
I will move it.
Second,
Okay.
Jay, what air conditioning for which building?
That is for the town hall. The air conditioning system went down over the summer.
And it's being replaced, or is this the repair?
It was repaired, and Michael can speak to it. We try to collect under our insurance. We were not able to do so, and we had to hire a contractor. You have anything to add, Michael?
No, well, we did file for the insurance because it was the piping between the cooling tower and the building that needed to be replaced, that had broken. It wasn't covered under insurance. Therefore, we ended up with the cost. The towers, everything's been repaired. We're back up and functional. So,
And that cost $60,000?
Yes, it did.
Good grief.
Well, you have to remember that we also have the Berkshire Hills Regional School in this building, as well as the town hall, the senior center, and so forth and so on.
So it
Okay.
actually costs more than that. That's just the town's share.
No.
no, that's
So that's
total.
the entire, we're the landlord, Bill.
The rest of our tenants that are entitled to.
Right, air conditioning.
I see. Okay. All right.
Right.
Still, God, what a price tag.
It's a
Okay.
costly system we have back there.
So
Can I have a motion, please, to give me the authority in advance to sign off after the select board signs tomorrow evening?
I think that was
already
moved. That was moved and seconded already. I
Who
moved it,
Who seconded?
and Bill, did you second that?
I did.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Diane?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Are you okay with the approval of the?
Yes, yes, go
Jim?
ahead.
Jim
Yes.
Belfast?
Yes.
Steve Schatz, yes.
Yes.
Boudreau?
Yes.
Bill? And
Yes.
myself. Okay. Moving on to the next item, we want to discuss the beginnings of the fiscal year 22 operating budget. And basically, I think there are several major components to the budget. I've outlined them on my agenda. Public safety, to include police, fire, and ambulance, and public works, highway, transfer station, water and sewer. Now, I've had discussions with Michael Canales, who can uh, 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 enlighten us on this. We're talking this year about the prospects of zero-based budgeting, which means that we start from scratch and everything really has to be justified, as opposed to level funding as we have done in the past. Michael, you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, so as we discussed, what I've been talking to different department heads is most of them have just taken the budget as presented to them and either level funded or added, say, at 2%, without focusing on really reviewing what they're asking for, why they're asking for it, and how these numbers are calculated. I am developing a budget control document that will be used in order to put the budget together. It's in draft form right now. I will be sending it to the committee. If you want, you could do if you set screen sharing for the M Canales one, because that's my desktop. I can show you what the document looks like.
We want to take a look at that, everybody?
Sure.
Go ahead. Steve, do you have to help him with the,
I already did.
okay, good. Here it is.
So this should look familiar to everybody. Now, right now, everything's color coded. This is what generally is presented at the town meeting with the various ones. So the green ones are ones that are already well under the way, nearing completion. Yellow are ones that I'm waiting for other parties. And then some of the white ones I haven't got to yet. So I started off first with really outlining our debt schedule so I could get a look at what the future of our debt is, what's coming off, what's staying on. Do I need to make it bigger? Can everybody see this fine?
I can see it fine.
Can see it.
It's fine.
So I started with the debt schedule and took all of our existing debt and took it out for the life of all the debt that we have with the town of Stockbridge out to 2038. So, and then I know that because of the way we're set up, we have the town sewer expansions that were budgeted, that some of it comes out of the sewer and water. So then at the bottom is what we actually need for budgeting every year. And as you can see, there's some milestones that are coming up in the next couple of years. We're going to see about over 300,000 in annual debt payments drop off in fiscal year 2025. And then we will see another large jump of 400,000 drop off for fiscal year 2027. To me, what that is indicative of is if there are some capital items and we did not want to affect the tax rate and we were looking to make some investment, that you could borrow, such as starting in fiscal year 23, you could do 2 years of interest only payments with principal coming on in 25. Therefore, something like the tax rate wouldn't get a large adjustment. And then, like I said, the next big one would be in 2027. So this just allows us to look forward, what's happening with the debt, when's it coming off, and then what opportunities does it present to possibly bring on some deferred maintenance issues that we may want to deal with.
2 questions, if I may, Mike and Jay, if that's all right.
Yes, please, Bill.
One, this of course does not make any assumptions about additional debt that at some point we're going to have to take on if the high school gets renovated or rebuilt.
Correct.
And that could happen just at the time these, these reductions that you pointed out in 2025, 26 are taking place. And so I think we have to look at, the good news of reductions in debt balanced by the likelihood that we're going to see an increase in debt. And then the second point I'd make is I think it may be worth examining, Jay, whether there's an opportunity at this time to refinance any of this debt at lower rates.
With respect, there were two quick issues, if I can make a comment, Bill. One of the other businesses will be, we are going to set up a meeting with the Berkshire Regional School District, specifically Southern Berkshire, Berkshire Hills. They want to meet with each of the select boards and finance committees to talk about their future plan, okay? So we'll get some sense as to what they're planning. And number two, Erica Olson, our treasurer, has joined the staff as of January 11. And as soon as she gets her feet on the ground, one of the things that we're going to talk to her about is looking at our outstanding accounts, debt, refinancing, et cetera. So does that answer your comment?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because that's definitely on the agenda. And, as far as the Berkshire Hills Regional, the school, Southern Berkshire, Berkshire Hills, we've got to see where they're coming from. They've got to make a presentation and see what's involved.
But
So,
I think we know that they have not abandoned the idea of rebuilding the high school, right?
no, there's no question, but the issue is, who are the participants going to be? I don't want to second guess their presentation.
Yeah, okay,
No.
that's fine.
Jay,
So-
I have a question regarding that, or a comment. Somewhere along the line, as we're going to be dealing with the school budget, I hope we can get the report that we've gotten in the past as to the total number of students from each of the three towns. I think that's important to know, how many from Stockbridge, how many from West Stockbridge, et cetera.
Let me just, and I wasn't planning on jumping around. The Regional School District Planning Board is planning on meeting, these are the towns that they're meeting with respect to their future plans. Great Barrington, Stockbridge, West Stockbridge, Sheffield, New Marlborough, Monterey, Egremont, and Alfred. So we need to discuss with them what they view as the census, who's going to be involved. If they're talking about capital expenditure, who is involved in this whole process. I think it's a little premature right at this point. We need to hear them out, okay? Jim?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I just think
Yeah.
somewhere along the line, we should know
Absolutely.
what the number of students are in the school district.
Agreed. Okay. Go ahead, Michael.
It's 113, I think.
Patrick, 113, maybe with the three, with Stockbridge alone, you're talking about.
Yeah, from Stockbridge.
I think Jim's
what's the
point
total?
is the entire system.
Right.
Okay, go ahead, Patrick. Excuse me, Michael.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with what's being said about the school. We understand that the school could create a significant debt, and I think it's worth us understanding when we could possibly plug in those interest and principal payments where it wouldn't cause a huge jump in the tax rate. So similar to something we did up in North Adams when Conti Middle School was redone 2 years ago, it was time to come on. The debt was designed to come on when the debt from the previous elementary school, Brayton Elementary, had fallen off. And it led to pretty much a smooth transition in the tax rate. So it's just something that we know we have a couple windows here coming up that if we are going to take on more debt, it wouldn't create. And that's why I wanted this schedule so you guys could see it. And like I said, both the Finance Committee and Select Board will get copies of this budget control document so that we can begin to do this analyzation.
Now, Michael, let me ask, with respect to the budget document, the historical budgets that you put on the screen, basically, with that regard, we have historically met with the major departments to discuss
Yep.
any variation. Are we still planning to do that?
Yes, any departments that finance or select board want to meet with, we can bring them in to meet, definitely. And then we will use these documents, this control document, to analyze what they're presenting. So one of the first ones I started together with was police. So here's an example of taking the departments. So right away, what you have here is a spreadsheet that takes in all the different components that are involved in the police salary, such as educational stipends, fitness stipends, longevity, what their overtime rates are, what their current rates are. What I built in is also a calculator. So if, say, it's decided police receive a 2% raise, we put in 2%, it'll calculate out exactly what the costs are. What I like to do is eliminate all variables, all known variables. So we know that, looking here, you've got vacation time that the officers have. Now there's two that are bolded. One is the chief and the other one's the administrative assistant. We don't backfill those. But whenever anybody else takes a vacation, we have to backfill those positions and it costs us overtime. So knowing this, you create a calculation that shows that if they taking all their vacation time, in order to cover their shifts, it costs us an additional $28,000. We also know that there's X training days in a year per officer. We know the sick days, personal days, and then we know they are allowed to carry over up to 5 days of compensated overtime from one fiscal year to another. You take all those and put them together, you're creating all the knowns. This allows us to come down to the budget breakdown. And this is sort of color coded so I can keep track of things. When you get it, it'll be a little cleaner. But it shows what the increases from 21 to 22 would be, how each one of them is calculated, and refer back to these. So it's just trying to eliminate, minimize the amount of variables. Let's make sure that we're budgeting for our knowns. And this would allow us to create a good budget for police, DPW, any of the larger departments. So I did the same thing with the DPW water departments, where we have a breakdown of all the different positions, all the different stipends, their overtime rates, typical overtime hours on a per weekly basis, vacation, and then also breaks it down by all the different departments. And then this ties into that front sheet that goes to town meeting, where all these numbers feed the front sheet. So this will just allow us to make changes as we go to the individual documents, and then every year add new columns and then be able to track back what's been happening.
So we will get copies of these at some point,
You're gonna
right?
get copies of these in Excel, so you can fiddle around with them if you're good at Excel. Take a look at them. And then I'll also end up building in our revenue calculations. I don't have the historic stuff in, but I have last year's and this year's. What was done, what the recap would look like. I've got in the budgets, but I have to put in the actuals, so you can take a look at what the actuals ended up being. And then a calculator for coming up with an estimated tax rate based on what we're doing. So, and this is based off of the Commonwealth, off the levy limit sheets that we get, that we submit for, and then takes in all of our assessing information. So right now this number is very raw, so I don't want anybody thinking anything's done or anything else. Some of the calculations that we have in the budget there's no pay increases built in yet, but like I said, there are multipliers that allow me to just make some simple changes. And I also did it for all the general government like I said, debt schedule. And then we also broke down all the expenses for the different departments onto the spreadsheet where you would get, like on highway, what was appropriated and what was expended for the last 3 known fiscal years, the current year's appropriation, and then the request for 2022. Same thing for the water department, sewer department. So we break those down so people can take a look at exactly where have we come in, how close have we been, where can we make adjustments, where are adjustments needed.
And-
One that I haven't got very far into is the transfer station. We need to take a good look at the transfer station because last year a new contract was signed and the rates changed significantly, but the budget did not. So right now we are probably heading toward a $30,000 deficit in the transfer station. And I will be taking a look at the contracts, building that one out in the next week to make sure that the transfer station is adjusted correctly.
We also, Michael, want to be sure that we have a chance to discuss some of the expense items, the large expense items, i.e. ambulance, i.e. things like legal fees, i.e. Anything of that nature, so that we have a chance to discuss it, whether or not it's increasing or decreasing or going away, if you will.
Yep.
That's important.
I think this is mainly just a control document that allows us to just take a look at historically what's been done. And gives us as a good thing that we can just build off of year to year and have that historical information right at our fingertips as we examine what's happening. So Teresa's been a great help in helping put this together. But it's something I felt like we just needed. I know we talked about, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get to it, but as I started, I needed to understand the budget better. And this allowed me to just dig into the budget in a deeper way to allow me to understand how things were done.
I think it's a very valuable undertaking. Anybody have any comments on this?
I think it's,
Steve, Jim, Bill?
well, first of all, I think it's a very impressive spreadsheet, and I'm sure it's going to be very useful, and it's comprehensive, and it looks like it's actually user friendly. So, Michael, thank you. I want to back up a little bit and to this question of a zero-based budget in contrast to
Level funding.
level funding. I wonder whether we shouldn't be at least considering, as in our fiduciary roles, whether to ask departments to produce a budget that takes 5% out of their last year's budget. I just think that's could be a very healthy exercise to determine, okay, are we cutting into muscle, or are we finding areas where in fact we can live with a reduction instead of level funding or zero-based. I guess it's a form of zero-based budgeting if you tell departments, we want you to come back with something 3%, 5%, whatever the number is, less than you've requested in the previous year. I realize that a lot of these are salaries, and we can't do that with salaries.
Some are unionized also, okay?
I get that, but there are also non-salary items that I just think we should look at with a pretty sharp pencil, and that's one way to do it.
Michael, comments on that?
Yeah, now I'm not a big believer in just arbitrarily putting numbers of what should be or shouldn't be cut. What I guess I look more for is I would love to see people be able to justify why. Let me give you a small example. When I looked at the police budget with the chief, there's a special police officer position and then community policing. Now, the current chief's been using community policing for various items that are needed. The special police officer was an officer that was actually used under the last chief. And this budget line item has not been hit for years. So right away, by looking at this, we said, then there's no reason to budget this for next year. So that's that part of looking a little deeper into these numbers and saying what's realistic. One of the things that I would, and I've mentioned this to Jay, when we look under public work expenses, I don't see anywhere where there's any money going toward bridges. But we've identified that beginning in the 90s, we were receiving bridge inspection reports with small deficiencies in many of our bridges, and none of them were really addressed for year after year. So we're trying to go back quite a ways and look at what are these issues. So instead of saying 5% reduction, saying what are our needs and then what are our wants. Needs are what we need. You know, if we put in small amounts into these into things such as these bridge inspection reports that come in, it could prevent us from having bridges that are down and spending a lot more money in the long run than it would have been if we had put the money shorter. So it's just, that's the only reason why I don't like that. But if you look, some of these, there are reductions, because as we've questioned, why are we still funding lines that haven't been used in years? Or
Right.
why are these? And that's because I think with the level funded or just 2% increases, no one was looking at their numbers. They were just going, okay, I'll level fund, I'll make it work. Well,
Michael, why don't you comment briefly on your very preliminary observations on the highway department, i.e. management, you know, what you're looking at. And Bill, this goes right into your thoughts. Go ahead, Michael.
yeah. So specifically, as we look at how we want to restructure the DPW, one of the things that we're looking at is the possibility of bringing on a new position within the union instead of the superintendent position, but we're looking at the possibility of a mechanic, specifically to be able to cover some of the costs of machinery. This would be looking at somebody that has experience with from hydraulic brakes to the rest that can do some of this work. So we'd be looking at, you know, possibility of bringing somebody in that position. And this is us trying to examine what would be the best way to fill that position. How would we best be able to operate that department? So, you know, that's one of our thoughts in putting that together. And then as I put together all the different budget line items for the DPW, and I had to actually, I asked Mike Pafoni and others to come up and take a look. Right now, I have a significant decrease overall in the highway budget due to the fact that with all the buildup of money just being moved along, we really haven't analyzed this. So even though we'll have 5 guys in there, I do think that we will end up seeing quite a significant decrease there. I also think that we're bringing in a good position that would benefit the department the most.
I think the point here, folks, is let's see what Michael's first cut is, you know, with respect to his form and his analysis, and then we can dig into it, you know, from there. Let's see what the first shot is. Everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, anything else relative to the fiscal year 22 operating budget? More to follow, forms will be circulated, department meetings will be scheduled. Any other comments or thoughts on this?
Well, Jay, I do. I have a thought that came up while you mentioned union salaries and so forth. I did see where over in New York State, Cuomo announced that there would be no salary increases for next fiscal year. And his justification for it seemed pretty logical. And I just would ask that be given some consideration for our employees as well. In particular, those that are in the town hall where they've been totally isolated. and protected. When you consider the highway department and their exposure to COVID and all that, I think it's a different situation, but I would like to see some consideration. And I understand union contracts, but I think it could also be negotiated with the unions that maybe some give and take there for this next fiscal year due to the COVID situation. And along with that, I ask, we still don't know what the figures are. The last time we got an update on the figures, they appeared to be pretty good as far as income, but I assume we're going to be getting revenue figures here before too long, so we can know exactly where we stand.
Okay, more to follow on that.
Thank
I'll
you.
follow up with
Well
Ray to
taken.
make sure you guys have the most recent numbers.
Thank you.
The other thing, Jim, and I know you know this, but Cuomo is staring at a $16 billion budget
Deficit,
deficit.
right.
I understand.
Fortunately, that is not Stockbridge's problem.
Exactly, exactly. Well, let's not debate this at this point.
Right.
Let's move through this. So that is the preliminary discussion we have on the fiscal year operating budget. Michael has commented on this. We'll wait to see what comes forward. Are there any questions or thoughts again on this particular agenda item? There being none, moving on, Michael, how about the 5-year capital budget?
All right, so obviously, part of what we were looking at, the debt includes capital that we've spent before. But moving forward, we have a number of items. I've expressed this to some of the selectmen and I believe to Jay that behind me, each of these 3-ring binders are actually projects that the town has taken on and are various stages of work. And one of my goals is over this next year and a half is to get these off the board. So, and then bring on new items that we can tackle. Right now, we just have a lot of projects that are in various stages. One of the things, though, we have to still be looking out for is what do we need to invest in. So I'm going to be submitting out to the departments this, let me see if I can change the. So I'll be sending out to all the departments what a capital budget requests look like going forward, how we're going to submit them so that they can be reviewed by the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee. Make sure they all understand the definition of it. $5,000 or greater with a useful life of 5 years or more, how they'll be submitted, the information that they need to provide, and then when they would have to have them supplied by. So for this year, anything that they even want us to consider, I have down for Friday, February 5th by 4 o'clock. What I'll be doing is getting out to them this document, which is, tell me what your request is, what's the name of the project, what's the estimated cost, how many capital requests are coming from your department, and then rank them from most important to least important. Tell us which criteria they hit, from emergency to public safety to court ordered to asset preservation, reimbursement. Give us a description of them, identify funding sources, and explain how it will impact future budgets, which is something we need to consider whenever we take on capital expenditures. Will it reduce, unchanged, or increase the cost? And then where would possible recommended funding sources come from? So this will just allow us to begin developing a new comprehensive 5-year budget for capital items. So I'm going to be requesting this from all the departments, committees, and the rest to put in for what they'd like to see. The only ones that I'm aware of that are moving forward right now is, and I'll be working and been working with Hugh on, Hugh Page from the Highway Department on our fleet schedule. We need to take into consideration the equipment at the DPW as far as their truck fleet. What we want to do as far as the chime tower. And then there is a request coming from sewer for the pump station. So those are the three that I'm aware of that are potential items that could move forward. And they involve various costs in order for us to consider. But then if they, with this information, it would allow the Finance Committee and Select Board to make as educated of a decision on what we should be investing in.
I'd like to interject one point, Michael, and it's very interesting. Michael and I had a conversation about the Park Street pump station replacement. And one of the things on the table, and we've never heard this before, is the use of a prefabricated structure. You want to make a couple of comments? This is a way to save capital cost. Go ahead, Michael.
And I'll credit Tony from the sewer department for this. They looked at originally, they were looking at putting in the same pump stations that are in the rest of the town. And those are upwards of $700,000 in order to do those. But the pump station that we're talking about doesn't service a lot of homes. So they began looking at the option of using a prefabricated pump station, which basically is set in the ground. And then we would just have to go out to the bids in order to do the tie-ins for it, which will significantly lower the cost. So we're working on getting the final prices and moving those forward. So, that's one of those. And we're just trying to keep all options on the table for how to best move these requests forward. So that was an example.
Any further questions on this for Michael?
Well, I have a question. I don't know if this is the right, I think it is, Michael and or Jay, regarding things like Chapter 90 funds and so forth. Michael, are you going to be handling those categories now since we don't have Lenny? Or is my understanding was that he was pretty good at applying for those funds, the grants and so forth. Are we going to be having somebody that's capable and following up on those sources?
Yeah, the grants in Chapter 90, Chapter 90, we receive an annual allotment and just have to submit project base. So Hugh Page will take on the Chapter 90 as far as putting in for projects that we want to do in regards to Chapter 90 programs. Then for items such as applying for grant funding through the small bridge programs and others, those were done primarily through our engineering firms. So that work will continue anyways. And I will be taking the lead on those. So yes.
Great, thank you.
Anything else, folks?
I have
Okay.
one quick question for Michael.
Go ahead,
Since
Diane.
he's the Park Street pump station, is there some idea as to what he's suggesting, some kind of a ballpark, what that would be perhaps costing?
Yeah, we're gonna have, we were looking at 300 and something instead of 700. So,
Wow.
and that's still just a ballpark as we finish up the actual
Sure.
allotments. So, it was definitely what we thought was a more cost effective.
Diane, that was a very good question, and that's a very impressive savings over a major
Yeah.
construction project. So,
It sure is.
okay, if I might, anything else, folks, on this? More to follow. Moving on, one of the things that has been a little frustrating to me has been knowledge of a capital equipment inventory and what we have, where it is, who's responsible for it, how it's maintained. Any thoughts on this, Michael?
Yeah, so one of the things I can get out, we do have our assets all listed as far as through our insurance company. So we know all the vehicles, everything else. What we don't have are a good record of maintenance logs and things like that. So those are things that we are looking to put into place because we want to know how can we, I'm going to give you an example moving forward. One of the things that we're going to want to do when we invest in a new larger truck, and I know that was one of the things on consideration for last year's budget, but it was pulled, is that in addition to just having the larger truck, is making sure, such as roughly every 5 years, send it over to a company called ZWAC, have them sandblast the frame, have them replace hydraulics as needed so that we can extend the useful life of these vehicles. There are maintenance programs out there that will allow you to extend the useful life of vehicles. You can't do them now with the vehicles we have because they've gotten too far gone, but this will allow us to save. If you take it out over multiple years, it will actually end up saving you more by extending the life of these larger capital purchases. So, that's an example. The other thing is things like stainless steel beds for any of our vehicles so that we can move those stainless steel beds from one vehicle to another on the smaller trucks. A stainless steel bed it costs you more, but in the long run, because you can continue to reuse it and it doesn't rust compared to the other ones, unless it gets damaged, you can really extend the life of those pieces of equipment. So that's some of the things that we'll be looking at. So I'm going to be using from our insurance company, those fleet schedules and the rep that we have to put together, and then who's responsible for each piece of equipment.
This is very important, and this is something really that we have never done before. And Michael, I think it's a breath of fresh air, and it can save the town a considerable amount of money. Any further comments on the capital equipment inventory? Okay, moving on. Michael, let's get an update on a few of these projects that are in process. One of the highest profile is the Larrawag Bridge. What's going on there?
So the Larrawag Bridge, we have secured all the grants back to that project. So we didn't lose any grant funding. The state is working with us. But one of the big things is we did have to end the current contract that we have, and we had to rebid so that all work going forward onto the grants is done through proper procurement. So I did actually have a meeting Monday with BSC Group, who is our engineers on this project. They were also the ones that assisted us in getting the grant funding for it. And we are we're hoping by the end of the month to have bid documents drafted up, go out and bid the project, get the project work back on. And well, before we were looking at a late June ending, we're now looking late June, early July. We're now looking at late August, early September as a completion date for the Larrawag Bridge.
Does the BSO know that?
At this point, we just solidified those dates as of Monday. So where we think we'll be able to come in.
And I think, just as an aside, and not to get into the nitty gritty, we want to make sure that that the project entails restoration of Larrawag Crossroad and North Church Street, which is a major detour site for tractor trailers and everything else. So
There's some very important people that live on those roads.
I'm not sure about that, but actually, Bill, you drive down it. I see you driving down it too. So
Always observing the speed limit.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Anything else on Larrawag Bridge right now?
I thought that road was closed.
Exactly.
They tried.
All right. What's up with the garage, Michael?
So actually we moved in today. So we're in and operational out of our new highway garage. We haven't yet fully hit substantial completion, but we were able to get a temporary CO, and we have been able to move it onto our insurance plan and take operations out of the building. We are still dealing with a number of the punch list items that we need to get to, and we do have a roof leak issue, which the contractor has agreed he is going to redo the roof on that building. So, but But the good news is we're actually in and operational. So our guys do not have to operate outside or do not have to operate from a secondary location.
Do we perceive at this juncture any cash shortfall for this project, the garage?
Right now, it doesn't look like we're going to have a cash shortfall on this project.
Okay. Any
That's the
comments
best
on this?
news of the
folks?
day. That's the best news of the day.
Yes, it is. Okay, next one, Averick Bridge, Michael.
So we're going out to bid on the Averick Bridge. The bid documents actually just were released on the 13th. So we will have those coming back, and then we'll have our bid opening in early February and proceeding with the Averick Road Bridge.
Can I ask about that, Michael?
Yeah.
There are actually two bridges, and I thought we already had grant funding for one of them.
That Averick Road is the one that we have $500,000 for the Averick small bridge replacement grant for.
For the one that's closest to Interlaken Road.
I believe.
That's 183.
Yeah,
Yes.
but there's another bridge right next to it that goes over Larry Wog Brook. Is not it's a separate bridge. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I know there's also Curtisville.
No, I'm
Is
talking
No,
about,
that's something else.
No.
that's a
All right.
different, there are actually two Averick Road bridges. That's my point.
One of them's been out for years.
They've both been out for,
No, I'm saying the one that's not being currently repaired. Yes, you're right.
no, neither one is being currently repaired. Nothing's happening on either one.
The town has funded the repair of the first. It hasn't funded the repair of the second.
That's
Second.
sort of my point. So what are we talking about, Michael? When you talk about what you just described, is that the first bridge that the town has already funded, or is it the
Yeah,
second one?
that's the first one that we already funded.
So the second one, nothing is being done about it,
Nothing no, we
Which
haven't identified. Yeah,
which means that road will remain closed indefinitely.
right. So right now, what we need to do is clear up the two bridges that we have grant programs on, MassWorks and the small bridge program, and then turn around and reapply for the small bridge program or possibly MassWorks grant to cover the next bridges that need to get done.
Okay,
So, but we need to get these projects going, completed, and then get them off so we can reapply for potential funding.
yeah, I hear you. Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Michael, Curtisville, you wanted to talk about that.
Curtisville Bridge has temporary utilities has been awarded. We have a contractor, contracts have been signed, and we'll be moving forward with the replacement of the moving of the utilities from underneath that bridge onto a temporary structure in order to protect those utilities. One of the things that we need to start considering is what options there are around Curtisville and which approach should we be looking at taking in regards to that bridge. So Teresa was able to get me a nice large box full of information from 2010 through 16, where a bunch of work and studies were done on those bridges, identifying on the Curtisville Bridge some of the deficiencies that needed to be dealt with, and then decide which course of action. So it seems as though in this one, it's just been, studies have been done, but whether or not there's actually been discussion and a push to decide which path to take as far as restoration, replacement, removal, pedestrian bridge, whatever, those things need to happen. Because what we're doing is temporarily replacing utilities because we haven't addressed concerns about the bridge itself. And the bridge itself remains closed and will only continue to deteriorate unless we do something. So,
The funding for the utility relocation, is that coming from water sewer surplus?
yeah, you already had this money. It was already moved last year.
Okay,
Money necessary to do this project, yes.
You know, when they plan on actually making that change?
It'll be this spring.
Okay, thank you.
any other comments on that? Okay, we talked about the Park Street pump station, so there's nothing further on that. Has anybody, any questions on these items before? I have a couple of other business thoughts for everybody. Any questions up to this point? There being none, I did mention to the committee that Berkshire Hills and Southern Berkshire Regional School District Planning boards will be meeting with the finance committees and select boards of all the towns to talk about their plans and their budgeting. More to follow on that. We'll get dates, and it'll either be a separate meeting for this finance committee, or part of a finance committee itself. Erica Olson has started on the 11th, our new treasurer. We will talk to her, and I mentioned about the investments that we've made in the monies that are being held on behalf of the town. We did not. Why don't you mention quickly, Michael, the thought of your thoughts relative to the tree inventory? We've had some concerns that during recent storms, trees have come down, and maybe we need to have a way to look at the trees around town to see if proactive efforts should be taken. Any thoughts on that, Michael?
Yeah, just starting to look into that as far as, I know we have a tree warden who identifies trees and takes down some, but we are speaking through with National Grid on this issue. We tried to set up a meeting before the holiday. We'll be trying to set up, getting one together after the holiday to address some of these, because we definitely have issues with tree branches and other things. When we get more wind events is actually what's causing a lot of our outages, while you don't necessarily see it in other communities. It has been brought to my attention that some of that may be around the fact that we have a lot of scenic ways. So a lot of the trees aren't cut back around the electrical poles, while other communities don't have that. And you see trees that are significantly cut in order to get them out of the electrical lines. But it is something to consider, because the more wind events we have, we seem to be having an increase in the amount of outages.
Okay, any comments on that? Michael, you want to just run through very quickly for the committee the procurement policy that you're going to propose, $10,000 and over?
Yeah, so I'm going to be releasing to all the department heads and the rest to make sure that anytime we have procurements that as an aggregate or individually exceed $10,000, that they're going to have to fill out a procurement data form, which will be signed off by the department head, by myself as procurement officer for the town, and by the accountant that funds are available for that purchase. I know we had taken examples from other communities and some larger communities that had quite lengthy ones, but I sort of shortened it up, made it short and sweet, that basically it comes to the point that anytime you're purchasing above $10,000, prior to the purchase, you got to run by the procurement and through me. So that will just allow us to address what type of project it is, what type of procurement it has to hit, and make sure that we're not ending up with any issues again moving forward.
Questions, anybody?
Sounds fair.
Diane, did you have something, or you're comfortable with that?
Yes, it sounds very fair.
Excellent, absolutely. FYI, a housing trust and a housing residential maintenance trust concept has been filed with the Community Preservation Committee for funding. We're looking at getting some additional information. There has been, at the last CPC meeting, a decent amount of support for this project. More to follow. It's something that's done by a number of our neighboring towns: Lenox, Great Barrington, Williamstown, a host of towns. And what we're trying to do here is to incentivize first-time home buyers based on a financial and family size basis of need for the housing trust itself, so that we can get some young people here. And secondly, the maintenance trust would be more directed toward seniors that have certain financial constraints and have some commitments. These would not be contributions to people. They would become part of a home equity loan or part of a mortgage. So the procedure has to be developed. There's a considerable amount of effort that has to go into this, but we are looking for funding and commitment from CPC so that we can move forward. That is an FYI for everybody. It's extremely important. Also, from the committee standpoint, you have been circulated the ethics training distribution and conflict of interest. You've got to take the course and file the form back with Terry and Malini. That is important. There is a date on that in February. I also circulated to the committee a copy of today's Wall Street Journal on municipal borrowing of, quote, cheap money. I'm not proposing anything, but the point is made, hey, should we be refinancing? Is this something that has application to us and something that we should certainly be looking at? So those are my agenda. Michael, did I miss anything here?
You hit all the things we've talked about.
Anybody have any questions, concerns,
Yeah.
or thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to say something, Jay, if I may, and that
Yep.
is, I've been on the finance committee for a few years, and I have to say that listening to Michael and watching and listening to what he has prepared and is working on is really a breath of fresh air. I'm sure the rest of the committee shares that. I really look forward to working with Michael. I think we've got a real gem there, and I look forward to getting that information that he's.
Here. We're fortunate to have him. Believe me.
Tremendous, yeah,
Okay.
it really is.
Yep.
Just remember, we only gave him a 1-year contract, so be careful with those compliments.
Yeah, but
You're driving up your labor costs there, Bill.
Patrick,
Patrick, you only have a 3-year contract, so you gotta be careful too.
I'm pretty sure, if history's any guide, that is all it will be too.
Patrick, just give Michael a break, because every time I go into his office, I have to compliment him. So, I'm getting tongue-tied here, okay? Anything else, anybody? Okay? I thank you very much for your involvement, participation. We're going to have a busy year this year, and we're going to accomplish some great things. And thank you all. All right?
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Michael.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.